Betsy Aardsma was a bright, vivacious young woman with a promising future. Her smile could light up a room, and her enthusiasm for life was infectious. She had a zest for learning and a passion for helping others, qualities that endeared her to everyone who knew her. Hailing from the picturesque town of Holland, Michigan, Betsy had always been a standout student. Her academic excellence and love for literature led her to Penn State University, where she was pursuing a master's degree in English. The 1960s were a time of great change and opportunity, and Betsy was eager to make her mark on the world. Betsy was known for her warmth, intelligence, and love of literature. She had a natural ability to connect with people, making friends easily and leaving a lasting impression on everyone she met. Her friends often described her as a beacon of positivity, always ready with a kind word or a helping hand. She was a dedicated student, a loyal friend, and a beloved daughter and sister. Her family meant the world to her, and she often spoke of her close-knit relationships with her parents and siblings. They were her biggest supporters, cheering her on as she pursued her dreams. Her presence graced the halls of Penn State, and her absence would leave an unfillable void. Betsy was not just another student, she was a vibrant part of the university community. Her professors admired her dedication and intellect, while her peers looked up to her as a role model. Betsy was immersed in her studies, eager to embark on a career in academia. She had dreams of becoming a professor, sharing her love of literature with future generations. Her passion for teaching was evident in everything she did, from her meticulous class notes to her enthusiastic participation in discussions. She spent countless hours in the university's library, surrounded by books and the quiet hum of knowledge. The library was her sanctuary, a place where she could lose herself in the world of words and ideas. It was here that she felt most at home, surrounded by the stories and characters she loved. It was in this seemingly safe haven that her life was tragically cut short. On November 28, 1969, Betsy was in the library, working on a research paper. The day started like any other, with Betsy focused on her studies and looking forward to the future. But in a cruel twist of fate, her life was abruptly ended by an unknown assailant. The news of her death sent shockwaves through the university and her hometown, leaving everyone who knew her in a state of disbelief and sorrow. The investigation into her murder was extensive, but despite the efforts of law enforcement, the case remains unsolved to this day. Betsy's story is a poignant reminder of the fragility of life and the enduring impact one person can have on the world. Her memory lives on in the hearts of those who loved her, and her legacy continues to inspire future generations. November 28, 1969, began like any other day on the Penn State campus. Students bustled between classes, the air alive with the energy of young minds. Thanksgiving break was just around the corner, and a sense of anticipation hung in the air, but for Betsy Aardsma, this Friday would be tragically different. Betsy made her way to Patty Library, a familiar and comforting space for her. She settled into the stacks, surrounded by towering shelves of books, to work on her research. Unbeknownst to her, danger lurked nearby. Later that afternoon, a group of students stumbled upon a horrifying sight in the library's stacks. They had been quietly studying, immersed in their books, when they noticed something unusual. A sense of unease began to spread among them as they ventured deeper into the rows of bookshelves. Betsy Aardsma lay sprawled on the floor, her body lifeless, a pool of blood staining the floor around her. The sight was shocking and surreal, as if it had been plucked straight out of a nightmare. The students could hardly believe their eyes, and for a moment, time seemed to stand still. Panic ensued, and the news of the tragedy spread like wildfire through the campus. Whispers turned into shouts, and soon, everyone was talking about the horrific event. The once peaceful library had become the epicenter of fear and confusion. Students who had been quietly studying moments before were now frantically calling friends and family, trying to make sense of what had happened. First responders arrived to a scene of chaos and confusion. Paramedics rushed in, their faces set with grim determination, while police officers tried to control the growing crowd. The library, usually a place of quiet reflection, was now filled with the sounds of sirens and urgent voices. The responders worked quickly, but it was clear that the situation was dire. Initial reports were unclear, with some speculating that Betsy had suffered a heart attack or some other medical emergency. The confusion was palpable, as no one could fathom that such a violent act could occur in such a serene setting. Reporters began to gather, eager to uncover the truth, but the details were still murky. However, it soon became horrifyingly clear that this was no accident. The realization hit like a tidal wave, washing over everyone present. Faces turned pale as the grim truth set in. Betsy Aardsma had not died of natural causes. She had been murdered. The weight of this revelation was almost too much to bear. Betsy Aardsma had been murdered. The library, once a sanctuary of knowledge and learning, was now a crime scene. Detectives began their investigation, meticulously combing through the area for clues. Crime scene tape cordoned off sections of the library, a stark reminder of the violence that had shattered the peace. The search for answers had begun, but the path to justice would be long and arduous. The investigation into Betsy Aardsma's murder was, tragically, marred by early missteps that would hinder the pursuit of justice for years to come. The initial response to the crime scene was chaotic and uncoordinated, setting the stage for a series of errors that would plague the case. The initial confusion surrounding the cause of death led to a delay in securing the crime scene. When first responders arrived, they were unsure whether Betsy had suffered a medical emergency or had been the victim of foul play. This uncertainty caused a critical delay in treating the area as a potential crime scene. Precious time was lost as investigators operated under the assumption of a natural death. This misjudgment meant that the scene was not immediately cordoned off, and vital evidence was not preserved. The initial responders did not treat the area with the urgency required for a homicide investigation. This crucial error allowed potential evidence to be compromised. As the minutes ticked by, the likelihood of collecting uncontaminated evidence diminished. Investigators, unaware of the true nature of the incident, inadvertently mishandled items that could have been key to solving the case. Witnesses, unaware of the gravity of the situation, walked through the area, potentially disturbing the crime scene. Onlookers and passers-by, curious about the commotion, inadvertently trampled over potential evidence, further complicating the investigation. The lack of proper protocol in those critical early hours cast a long shadow over the investigation. The police force, perhaps unprepared for such a serious crime, failed to implement the necessary procedures to secure the scene. This oversight would haunt the case for years, as investigators struggled to piece together what had happened. At the time, police training and procedures were not as advanced as they are today. Officers were often ill-equipped to handle complex crime scenes, and the protocols for preserving evidence were not as stringent. This lack of preparation contributed to the mishandling of Betsy's case. As the investigation progressed, the initial errors became more apparent. Investigators realized that crucial evidence had been lost or contaminated, making it difficult to draw definitive conclusions. The early missteps created a ripple effect, complicating every subsequent step of the investigation. The frustration among the investigators was palpable. They were faced with the daunting task of solving a murder with compromised evidence in a crime scene that had not been properly secured. The early mistakes cast a long shadow, making it difficult to build a solid case. Despite these challenges, the investigators persevered. They meticulously reviewed the available evidence, interviewed witnesses, and attempted to reconstruct the events of that fateful day. However, the compromised crime scene continued to hinder their efforts, leaving many questions unanswered. The public and media closely followed the investigation, eager for answers. The case garnered significant attention, putting additional pressure on the investigators to solve the crime. Yet, the early missteps remained a significant obstacle, casting doubt on the integrity of the investigation. In the years that followed, advancements in forensic science and investigative techniques would highlight the shortcomings of the initial response. Modern investigators often look back at cases like Betsy's as cautionary tales, emphasizing the importance of securing a crime scene and preserving evidence from the outset. Today, law enforcement agencies are better equipped to handle such situations with rigorous training and advanced technology at their disposal. The lessons learned from past mistakes have led to improved protocols and a greater emphasis on the importance of the initial response to a crime scene. The investigation into Betsy Aardsma's murder serves as a stark reminder of the critical importance of the early stages of a crime scene investigation. The errors made in those first few hours had long-lasting repercussions, underscoring the need for meticulous attention to detail and adherence to protocol. As we reflect on the case, it is clear that the lessons learned from Betsy's tragic death have shaped the way modern investigations are conducted. The importance of securing a crime scene and preserving evidence cannot be overstated, and the legacy of this case continues to influence law enforcement practices to this day. As investigators delved into the case, they were met with a baffling lack of answers. No witnesses could definitively place anyone with Betsy in the moments leading up to her death. The murder weapon, believed to be a sharp instrument, was never recovered. The stacks where Betsy was found were notoriously secluded, offering a degree of privacy that tragically worked in the killer's favor. Whispers of a mysterious man seen fleeing the library circulated, but these accounts were often conflicting and ultimately led to a dead end.